على آبائي في هذه الساعة وفي كل الساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك وتمتعه فيها طويلا. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله، السلام عليك يا خيرة الله وابن خيرته، السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين وابن سيد المرسلين، السلام عليك يا ابن العالمين، السلام عليك يا ثار الله وابن ثاره والمتر الموتور، السلام عليك وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك، عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت، بقي الليل والنهار. يا أبا عبد الله لقد عظمت الرزية وجلت وعظمت المصيبة بك علينا، قد أساس الظلم والجور عليكم على البيت، ولعن الله أمة دفتكم عن مقامكم وأزالتكم عن مراتبكم التي رتبكم الله فيها، ولعن الله أمة قتلتكم، ولعن الله الممحدين لهم بالتمكين من قتالكم، برئت إلى الله وإليكم منهم ومن أشيائهم وأتباعهم وأوليائهم. يا أبا عبد الله إني سلم لمن سالمكم وحرب لمن حاربكم إلى يوم القيامة، ولعن الله لزياد وعلى مروان، ولعن الله بني أمية قاطبة، ولعن الله ابن مرجان، ولعن الله عمر بن السعد، ولعن الله شمرا، ولعن الله أمة أسرجت والجبت وتنقبت لقتالك. بأبي أنت وأمي لقد أزم مصابي بك، أسأل الله الذي أكرم مقامك وأكرمني بك أن يرزقني طلب ثارك مع إمام منصور من أهل بيت محمد صلى الله عليه وآله. اللهم اجعلني إنك وجيها بالحسين عليه السلام في الدنيا والآخرة. يا أبا عبد الله إني أتقرب إلى الله وإلى رسوله وإلى أمير المؤمنين وإلى فاطمة وإلى الحسن وإليك بموالاتك وبالبراءة ممن أسس أساس ذلك وبنى عليه بنيانه وجرى في ظلمه وجوري عليكم وعلى أشيائكم مرت إلى الله وإليكم منه وتقربوا إلى الله. ثم إليكم بموالاتكم، موالاة وليكم وبالبراءة من أعدائكم، والناصرين لكم الحرب بالبراءة من أشيائهم وأتباعهم. مني سلم لمن صالمكم، حرب لمن هاربكم، وولي لمن ولاكم، وعدو لمن عاداكم. وأسأل الله الذي أكرمني بمعرفتكم ومعرفة أوليائكم ورزقني البراءة من أعدائكم أن يجعلني معكم في الدنيا والآخرة، وأن يثبت لي عندكم قدم صدق في الدنيا والآخرة، وأسألوا أن يبلغ المقام المحمود لكم عند الله، وأن يرزقني درب طريقكم مع إمام هدى ظاهر ناطق بالحق منكم. وأسأل الله بحقكم بإشان الذي لكم عنده أن يؤتيني بمصابي بكم أفضل ما يؤتي مصابا من مصيبته، مصيبة ما أعظم وأعظم رزية في الإسلام وفي جميع السماوات والأرض. اللهم اجعلني في مقامي هذا ممن تنال منك صلوات ورحمة ومغفرة. اللهم اجعل محياي محيا محمد وآل محمد، ومماتي ممات محمد وآل محمد. اللهم إن هذا يوم تبركت به بنو أمية وابن كلد الأكماد اللين ابن اللين على لسانك ولسان نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله في كل موطن وموقف وغف فيه نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله. اللهم لعن أبا سفيان معاوية يزيد بن معاوية عليهم منك اللعنة أبد الآبدين. وهذا يوم الفرد بيال زياد وآل مروان بقتل الحسين صلوات الله عليه. اللهم وظائف عليهم اللعنة منك والعذاب الأليم. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك في هذا اليوم وفيما وفي هذا وأيام حياتي بالبراءة منهم واللعنة عليهم وبالموالاة لنبيك وآل نبيك عليه وعليهم السلام. اللهم لن أفضل الظالم ظلم حق محمد وآل محمد وآخر طاب له على ذلك. اللهم انقل الإصابة التي جاهدت الحسين وشايعت وبايت وتابعت على قتله. اللهم نرحم جميعا. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وإلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. والسلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. اللهم خص أنت أول ظالم باللعن مني، وابدأ به أولا ثم عن الثاني والثالث والرابع. اللهم لن يزيد خامسا والعان عبيد الله بن زياد وابن مرجانة وعمر بن سعد والشمر وعمر بن سعد والشمر وعلى أبي سفيان وعلى زياد وعلى مروان إلى يوم القيامة. سجدة. اللهم لك الحمد حمد الشاكرين لك على مصابهم. الحمد لله على عظيم رزيتي. اللهم ارزقني شفاعة الحسين يوم الورود وثبت لي قدم صدق عندك مع الحسين وأصحاب الحسين الذين بذلوا معجم دون الحسين عليه السلام برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. فو شفای مریض، سلامتی و زور آقای امام زمان، صلوات.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. واتل عليهم نبأ إبراهيم إذ قال لأبيه وقومه ما تعبدون. قالوا نعبد أصناما فنظل لها عاكفين. قال هل يسمعونكم إذ تدعون أو ينفعونكم أو يضرون. قال هل يسمعونكم إذ تدعون أو ينفعونكم أو يضرون قالوا بل وجدنا آباءنا كذلك يفعلون قال أفرأيتم ما كنتم تعبدون أنتم وآباؤكم الأقدمون واتل عليهم نبأ إبراهيم إذ قال لأبيه وقومه ما تعبدون قالوا نعبد أصناما فنظل لها عاكفين قال هل يسمعونكم إذ تدعون أو ينفعونكم أو يضرون قالوا بل وجدنا آباءنا كذلك يفعلون قال أفرأيتم ما كنتم تعبدون ما كنتم تعبدون أنتم وآباؤكم الأقدمون فإنهم عدو لي إلا رب العالمين الذي خلقني فهو يهدين والذي هو يطعمني ويسقيني وإذا مرضت فهو يشفيني والذي يميتني ثم يحيين والذي أطمع أن يغفر لي خطيئتي يوم الدين رب هب لي حكما وألحقني بالصالحين
واجعل لي لسان صدق في الآخرين واجعلني من ورثة جنة النعيم. واغفر لأبي إنه كان من الضالين. ولا تخزني يوم يبعثون يوم لا ينفع مال ولا بنون إلا من أتى الله بقلب سليم. يوم لا ينفع مال ولا بنون إلا من أتى الله بقلب سليم وأزلفت الجنة للمتقين. إلا من أتى الله بقلب سليم وأزلفت الجنة للمتقين. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Thank you, Brother Husayn and Brother Sayyid Hassan, for the recitation of Ziyarat Ashura and the Holy Qur'an. Tonight being the last lecture, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for providing us with this venue and the tawfiq to hold the majalis of Aba Abdillah Hussain. I would like to further thank Shaykh Murtaza for preparing a series of insightful lectures, and I hope you were all able to benefit from his knowledge. I would also like to thank the reciters and the volunteers for working tirelessly over the last 11 nights to make the programming available to all of us. And lastly, I would like to thank Shaykh Rizwan for doing the last lecture of the series. Just one important reminder for my dear parents to keep your children with you at all times, and please use the mother's and the father's room as much as possible to keep the noise levels down. Let us welcome Shaykh Rizwan with 3 loud salawats.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل، نعم المولى ونعم النصير. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. الحمد لله الذي علا في توحده ودنا في تفرده وجل في سلطانه وعظم في أركانه وأحاط بكل شيء علما وهو في مكانه والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم محمد صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعن الدائم على أعدائهم إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, Salaam alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, during the last 10 nights, we were introduced to the concept of wilayah through a series of lectures that were presented by Shaykh Murtaza Bachu. He looked into the esoteric dimension of wilayah, and then from there looked at the practical implications of wilayah. And those practical implications had to do with wilayah regarding the individual person, wilayah with regards to the influences that we have from outside of us, wilayah in marriage, and how does that look, wilayah when it comes to the education of our children. He also looked at wilayah within the ummah, within the Shia community, within the ummah as a whole. And then finally, wilayah as it pertains to activism and how wilayah can affect activism so it becomes sacred activism. Today, inshallah, we wish to complete that series by speaking about the role of wilayah now when it comes to community building and the growth of sacred communities. One of the beauties of Islam is that when it presents the ideal pattern of behavior that we are asked to follow, it presents a very balanced picture and representation of what we are asked to follow. And when we look at this, the topic of the individual versus the collective, again, there too, we see this very balanced approach that it emphasizes both the individual and the collective and the mutual relationship between the two. So in Islam, or from an Islamic perspective, the community or the Jamaa or the ummah for that matter is not just a collection of individuals. It's not just a collectivity of individuals, that rather it has a huwiyat of its own. It has an identity of its own. There's something that unifies it as well. And that's why we know that on the day of judgment, there's two types of accounting that will take place. There's the individual accounting, where each one of us individually will have to account for our own individual actions. And from the verse, وَلَا تَزِرُ وَازِرَةٌ وِزْرَ أُخْرَى, that no bearer will bear the burden of others. You have that concept of this individual accounting, but then you also have this idea of a collective accounting, where each ummah will be raised with their book, for example, or each ummah will be raised with their imam, for example. And so when we read, for example, in Ziyarat Warith, when we read, لَعَنَ اللَّهُ أُمَّةً قَتَلَتْكَ وَلَعَنَ اللَّهُ أُمَّةً ظَلَمَتْكَ وَلَعَنَ اللَّهُ أُمَّةً سَمِيَتْ بِذَلِكَ فَرَضِيَتْ بِهِ, when we are asking Allah to stop His mercy from reaching these ummahs that killed, that kind of conspired to kill Imam Husayn alayhi salam, or that came together to oppress Imam Husayn alayhi salam, or that came together and heard what had transpired, but were content with it, that perhaps these ummahs too will be raised on that day of judgment, and they too will have to be or will be held accountable for what they did collectively, apart from what they did individually. So we want to disassociate ourselves from those from those ummahs that conspired against Imam Husayn alayhi salam, but we want to do the opposite. We want to see what does it look like when we try to do the opposite, where we try to actually grow a sacred community, a community that is in line with the path of Imam Husayn alayhi salam and the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. So today what I wish to do, inshallah, in the time that's been allocated, is to go over 5 characteristics, 5 qualities that distinguishes a sacred community from a regular community. It could be a cultural community, a sports community, even a religious community. But what we want to do is we want to look at what makes a community sacred. What makes a Jamaa sacred? And there are 5 qualities that I want to look at. The first quality is a sacred community is sacred because of the people who form that community. And this may be hard to kind of understand, but see, sometimes what happens is we conflate a community with a center, or we conflate a community with an institution or an organization. And for us, there's no difference between the two. The community is the center, and the institution is the community. But what this particular distinguishing quality says is that no, there's a difference. That the people in that community are not the center, that they're not the institution, and that in fact it is the quality of the people that determines the quality of the institution, or determines the quality of the center, and not the reverse. Now I'd like to illustrate this through the story that the Qur'an gives of the 2 masjids. One is a masjid that has been built on taqwa, and the other is a masjid that, according to the way that the Qur'an has defined it, is a masjid that's built on a collapsing bank that is headed towards the fire. And these are obviously referring to real masajids that were actually built during the time of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But I don't want to get into the context of these 2 masjids. I want to look at the universal principles that have been elaborated in the Qur'an. So with regards to that masjid that's based on taqwa, this is what the Qur'an says about it. From Surah Tawbah, verse 108. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم لمسجد أسس على التقوى من أول يوم أحق أن تقوم فيه. That truly the masjid that has been built upon taqwa from its very first day, from its inception, is more deserving that you stand in it. Standing in it, meaning that you stand to offer the prayers in it, that you do the qiyam of the salah in it. And then it's very interesting, the way that the Quran describes it. It says, فِيهِ رِجَالٌ يُحِبُّونَ أَن يَتَطَهَّرُوا. In that masjid are people who love to be purified, who are engaged in purification, who desire, who love purification. Now, why is this particular masjid that's built on taqwa, why is it worthy of standing on? Well, because it was built on the very basis of taqwa. Those who built it, the very initiators of it, they had taqwa in mind when they built the masjid. But how is this masjid being described? It's being described by the people that attend the masjid. And it describes what quality or characteristic that they have that makes this masjid worthy of going to. In other words, it's not the size of this masjid. It's not the design of this masjid. It's not where this masjid is located. It's not the name of this masjid. But it has to do with the people that go to this masjid. Because the people who go to this masjid are people who love to be purified, that's why this masjid is sacred. That's why this masjid now gains the sanctity. So the people and the quality of the people is what makes the masjid and anything affiliated with them sanctified. So a sacred community now is similar, is when the people now have a certain type of quality. That's now what makes everything else sacred about it. And hence the primary motivation then for people in a sacred community is this desire to remove themselves of filth, and filth at all the different levels. Filth of the mind, for example, shirk. Filth of the heart, filth of the emotions, filth of our actions. They come to the masjid in order to cleanse themselves, so that now they can become this pure mirror through which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can reflect His characteristics and His qualities. And we see that in the example of Karbala as well. You know, right now when we will inshallah end this program with the salaat, we use this torba to put down where our foreheads go and touch the ground. And most of this torba that we have is torba that comes from the land of Karbala. Why is that land of Karbala so sacred? What is it about that land of Karbala that is so sacred that we've been recommended to use that to put our foreheads upon? It's because of the sacrifice of the people, the pure people that sacrificed their lives on that land, that now the land has gained in sanctity, has gained in sacredness. So it's the people now that define the things that are around them. So that's the first distinguishing quality of what makes the community sacred. Number two, a sacred community is one that recognizes the essential nobility of each person, regardless of their race, their ethnic background, their socioeconomic status, their gender, regardless of all of that. They recognize that every single person has this inherent nobility in them. And this is now where something in the faith becomes important, and that's this conception or idea of mudara. Mudara, which has been recommended in the faith, and I will try to share hadith with regards to it. Mudara is when we are open to people, is when we are so-called tolerant to people, when we're amicable towards people, okay? And it has to do with this idea of recognizing the essential nobility within all people. And I'll try to explain, but I'll first share the hadith. So the hadith is from the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The Rasul says, Amarani Rabbi bimudarat nas, that my Lord has commanded me to do mudara with the people. He's commanded me to do this. It's not one of the mustahabat. This is a command. Kama amarani bi ada'il fara'id. In the same way that He's commanded me to fulfill all of the wajibat that I have. So this hadith tells us that this mudarat an-nas is very important. The question is, why is it so important? Why is it important to have this openness towards people? I'm going to try to explain it through this phrase that some of you may have heard. It's a very profound phrase, and the phrase goes this way. We are all equally created, but we are not created equally. Okay, I'll repeat it. We are all equally created, but we are not created equally. Okay, let's explain. Mudara has to do with both parts of that phrase. The first part, we are all equally created. What does that mean? That means that every one of us, regardless of who we are, we share one thing in common. And that's we're created. We're makhluk. We're not the khaliq, we're the makhluk. Which now gives us a point of commonality. That's a shared common thing that we can hold on to. So precisely because of that, now I can reach out to you. Why? Because you too are created by Allah in the same way that I'm created by Allah. You too are makhluk in the same way that I'm a makhluk. That's the first part. But we are not created equally. We know that. We're all created differently. Some of us have been given certain strengths that others don't have. But this too is where mudara is useful and is beneficial, because now I also understand that the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created you reflects certain attributes that you have which I don't have. So there's certain attributes about you that I can come to know which reflects Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which I wouldn't have known otherwise. Hence, the two reasons now for doing this mudara is because one, there's this commonality that we have, but two, because there's this difference which points to the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has manifested himself in different individuals. And that now through this mudara, I can come to know the other individual. Why is that important when we're talking about communities? The reason it's important is because it clears the ground. Okay? I'll give you an example. As a teacher, we often assign group work for our students. And when you assign group work for your students, you have to put students into groups. And there's different ways of doing that. One way is to let the students themselves choose their own groups. What happens when you let students choose their own groups? They end up gravitating towards those that are in their own circle of friends, or those they share some affinity towards. Or maybe they want to be in the group of a person who they know will do most of the work and they won't have to do as much work. Okay? But generally speaking, they'll gravitate towards people that they kind of are comfortable with, right? Okay, what does mudara do? Mudara means that I am willing to come in a group with people that I'm not normally comfortable with because I don't have as many commonalities with them. I don't share the same ethnicity with them. I don't share the same race with them. I don't share the same socioeconomic position with them. I don't share the same profession with them, but I'm willing to come together with them for what? So that now faith can be what unites us, not our ethnicity, not our profession, not any other attachments that we have and that we need to have as people. Those attachments, they're fine, but that doesn't become the basis of this new community. So what makes a community sacred is the fact that I'm willing to come together with people who are outside of my comfort zone. And we see this really play out incredibly, not only with the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but also with Imam Husayn alayhi salam in terms of the sacred community that he managed to gather around him. In that community, there were old people, there were young people, there were men, there were women, there were commanders and leaders, there were slaves, there were friends, and there were foes. Zuhair bin Qayn was not originally part of the camp of Imam Husayn alayhi salam. He did not go from Medina or from Mecca with Imam Husayn alayhi salam. A chance encounter, or rather a destined encounter, brought the two of them together. We do not know what Imam Husayn alayhi salam said to Zuhair, but whatever he said, Zuhair became one of the closest companions of Imam Husayn alayhi salam. such that on the day of Ashura, the enemy is actually surprised that Zuhair is there with Imam Husayn alayhi salam. And Zuhair tells them, I was not one of those who wrote letters to Imam Husayn alayhi salam, but I know that this is the right side. And the other example we have is of Hur. Hur, who was the one who stopped Imam Husayn alayhi salam from proceeding to Kufa, despite him having stopped Imam Husayn alayhi salam, on that day of Ashura, when he realized what was happening and he repented and he came to Imam Husayn alayhi salam, Imam Husayn alayhi salam did not hold that grudge. He did mudara. He was open to Hur. He was open to accepting Hur. It doesn't matter what you did in the past. If you are repentant, welcome. You are part of this sacred community now. So that's the second characteristic of a sacred community, is that you recognize the inherent worth of all people. The third characteristic that distinguishes a sacred community from one that is not sacred. A sacred community is committed to maintaining bonds at all times, not just in the centers, not just when there's a program, not when there's like an external reason to come together. They're constantly maintaining bonds. And this is where we come up with two other important concepts in our tradition. And those are the concepts of mulaqat and ziyarah. And now I'm going to try to give you a hadith with regards to both of these. So, mulaqat. Mulaqat means meeting. When you come together, when you meet with other brothers and sisters in Islam. We have a tradition from Imam Taqi alayhi salam who says, mulaqatul ikhwan nashratun wa talqihun lil aql wa in kana nazran qalila. That the meeting together of the ikhwan. So here it's not nas anymore. Now we're being specific. The meeting together of the ikhwan, these are the mu'mineen, is an expansion and an impregnation of the intellect. Impregnation meaning that it leads to new fruits. When the mu'mineen come together, even if they are few in number, or even if they meet for a short amount of time, there is this thing that happens in the aql where your aql actually expands and it grows and it comes to fruition. So mulaqat is really important. Now mulaqat is when the bodies come together. So the characteristic of a sacred community is where the people of that community are constantly trying to meet one another outside of the centers. So for example, at a coffee shop, at a park, in the library. For example, two brothers are working close to each other in a certain location. Instead of each one saying that I'm going to spend my lunchtime with my catching up on other stuff, catching up with my social media accounts and things like that, they say, no, there's a brother there who works very close to me. Let me go and spend some time with him and we'll have lunch together. That's mulaqat. That is a characteristic of a sacred community. The second, ziyarah. The Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Allah salli ala. He says the following. He says, Man zara akhahul mu'min. The person who does ziyarah, who goes to visit his brother who is a mu'min. So now we're talking about mu'mineen here. They're doing it on the basis of faith now. Where does he meet him? Not at a coffee shop, not at a public library, not at a public place. Ila manzilihi, at his house. La hajatan minhu ilayhi, not because he has a need. Not because he needs something from his brother and that's why he's going to visit him. No, he's going to visit his brother in his house for the fact that they're both mu'mineen. So they're trying to strengthen this bond between them. What happens when a person does this? Kutiba min zuwarillah. it will be written that he is the zawar of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He was a visitor towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَكَانَ حَقِيقًا عَلَى اللَّهِ أَن يُكْرِمَ زَائِرَهُ. And it behooves Allah, it is worthy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He honors His za'ir. Okay? So these are the mu'mineen that are coming together, not because of any hajat that one, it's not transactional. This visitation is not a transactional visitation. It's on the basis of faith. That's what determines a sacred community. Number 4, a sacred community is one that is anchored on the sacred. If you want to have a sacred community, there has to be an anchoring. What is it anchored on? It has to be something sacred. So, here is where 2 other things become important. One is majalis and one is dirasa. So for the first one, the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Allahumma salli ala. Inshallah, it says, Irta'u fi riyad al-jannah. He says, stay long in the gardens of paradise. He's talking to his companions. So his companions ask, Ya Rasulullah, wa ma riyad al-jannah? O Messenger of Allah, what are these gardens of paradise that you're talking about? We're here on the dunya. He says, majalisud dhikr. The gatherings of dhikr, of remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you are in a gathering in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is being remembered, prolong your stay there, because that's going to anchor you. And we'll speak about why it's important to be anchored. So this majalis comes from, majlis is literally the place of sitting. It's the place where you sit. And to sit is to, 1, be stable, and 2, to be receptive, because you're sitting, you're being receptive to teachings. Okay? In our collection of ahadith, we have many ahadith with regards to who we should sit with, who we should not sit with. Just one hadith from, again, the Prophet, who is quoting Prophet Isa alayhi salam, where the disciples of Prophet Isa alayhi salam actually are asking Prophet Isa, who should we sit with? And he says, sit with those who remind you of Allah when you look at them, whose speech increases you in knowledge, and whose deeds draw you to the hereafter. So these are some of the criteria for who we should sit with. And all of this just to anchor us so that we can become a sacred community. The second part is the dirasa. Now, dirasa is more than majalis. Majalis are, you're gathering together based on sacred times. For example, Muharram, or the month of Ramadan, or sacred spaces at a masjid, or for example in Karbala or other places. That's when you have majalis. Dirasa, though, is this continuous effort to try to increase your knowledge and your understanding and to develop your intellect. And here we're going to make that connection between wilayah and the community. Our intellects, in a sense, are that internal wali that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted each one of us. And it is always in line with the external wali, which is represented in the Prophet or the Ayyimah alayhim salam, or their representatives. So, to be involved, engaged in dirasa, where you're developing your internal wilayah or wali, or you're learning from the external walis, is something that is really important for anyone wanting to grow a sacred community. Because of a shortage of time, I'm just going to skip over some parts. But when it comes to dirasa, we have to have some anchorage in terms of what are we studying. When we're asked, when it's really important for those that want to grow a sacred community, and we tell them, well, it's important for you to be engaged in constant study. Well, what is it that you should be studying? Because all of us we're constantly studying, right? From the moment we start kindergarten until university and postgrad and a doctorate and all of that. But what is it actually that's going to really anchor us and ground us? And that's where the Qur'an tells us from Surah Al-Imran, verse 103, وَأَعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. And hold fast to the rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all of you collectively, and do not disunite. So here is a collective command to hold on to the rope of Allah. What is that rope of Allah? It's the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Kitabullah, and it's the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, or the Sunnah. And so when we hold on, when we make that the focus of our dirasa, then that now grounds us. And so I just want to share some words of Allama Tabatabai, who's commenting on this particular verse, and he says the following. He says, this verse therefore orders the Muslim community to hold fast to the book and the Sunnah, or the Ahlul Bayt, as it had earlier enjoined the individual to do so. In the same way that the individual has been commanded to hold on to the book and to hold on to the Ahlul Bayt, here communally we're asked to do that, to engage in communal durus. The people in this community want to increase collectively their knowledge. Then he says, a community built on disunited hearts and divergent minds cannot proceed under one leader or in one direction. It is bound to turn into a disoriented and deranged collection of people. It's no longer a unified community. It's no longer a sacred community. Now it's a scattered community, each one pulling it to his side as it suits his wishes. Why? Because the anchor is no longer the Qur'an. The anchor is no longer the Ahlul Bayt. The anchor is no longer haqq. The anchor now becomes your own desires, your own hawa. And when your anchor becomes your own hawa, then that community is bound to fizzle out. So, the fourth one is to anchor ourselves to that which will give us a firm foundation. And that's the fourth distinguishing quality of a sacred community. And now the last one. The last distinguishing quality of a sacred community is that it acknowledges that it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who does the ta'alif al-qulub. It is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that brings the hearts together, and that we can't orchestrate it, and we can't fake it, and we can't pretend it exists. It has to come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What we can do is prepare for it. So we do our part. We go over those four other qualities. We do our part, but then that eventually that grace comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He is the one who does the ta'alif al-qulub. He brings the hearts together. He is the one that actually brings the sacred community together. And on that note, I'll end with a hadith of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. It's a beautiful hadith where Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says the following. He says, Inna sur'ata atilafi qulubil abrar idha altaqu wa in lam yudhiru tawaddud bi alsinatihim kasur'ati ikhtilati ma'is sama bi ma'il anhar. Just incredible. He says, truly, the speed at which the hearts of the good doers, the pious doers, comes together, melts together, when they meet each other. So when two pious people meet each other, the speed with which their hearts melt together, even though they have not manifested any expression of love or attachment to each other through their words, is just as fast as when rainwater mixes river water and the two mix together. And you can't tell the difference between what is rainwater and what is river water. That is the speed in which this happens. And, by God, you see that on the plains of Karbala with the companions that came together surrounding Imam Husayn alayhi salam. And we mentioned the example of both Zuhair and Hur. You know what's remarkable, and this sticks with me all the time, is that once Zuhair had joined Imam Husayn alayhi salam, and he had become a committed follower and ashab of the Imam, he went along with the Imam, and he offered his advice wherever he could. And then we know that when Imam Husayn alayhi salam approached Karbala, Hur came and stopped his way. Now at that time, Hur was the only army that was around Imam Husayn alayhi salam, that Imam Husayn alayhi salam had to deal with. I forget the numbers, maybe 1,000 people. I forget how many soldiers Hur had brought with them. But Zuhair is the one who told Imam Husayn alayhi salam, he says, "Oh my Imam, there are other soldiers that are going to come after Hur. And by the time they come, there's no way that we're going to be able to make any impact on this war. So let's just start the battle now, and we probably have a good chance against Hur soldiers." Now remember, this is Zuhair, who joined the Imam later on, and who's telling the Imam now, and it's sincere advice. It's not as if he wants to, try to derail things. No, this is sincere advice. He's saying, let's go fight Hur and his soldiers. Now, fast forward to the day of Ashura. Hur has this revolution that occurs in his heart. He embraces this tawbah. He comes to Imam Husayn alayhi salam. Imam Husayn alayhi salam welcomes him and accepts him into the sacred community. Now you have these two individuals, Hur and Zuhair. At one time they were going to go against each other. Now they're fighting together. And the reports tell us that there was a time when the two of them were fighting side by side. And when when Hur required assistance, Zuhair comes and assists him. And when Zuhair requires assistance, Hur comes and assists him. These are how the hearts of the Abrar melt together when they meet. And this is what makes a sacred community. And so inshallah, we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to work towards growing a sacred community by following some of these steps that we have tried to delineate. Today is the 11th of Muharram, and today we remember the family of Imam Husayn alayhi salam. As we said, Imam Husayn alayhi salam's community, it was not just a community that was made of the menfolk and the menfolk who were old enough to be able to engage in battle. No, there were children there and there were women there. And the children and the women had a role to play in this event of Ashura. And their role that they played was not just after Ashura, it was before Ashura as well. They played a very strong role in this movement that took place before Ashura and continued, and it became explicit then after the tragic events of the day of Ashura. Sallallahu alayka ya Aba Abdillah, Sallallahu alayka ya ibn Rasulullah. It is the evening of Ashura. On the evening of Ashura, the blessed head of Imam Husayn alayhi salam was sent to the city of Kufa, while his body lay uncovered on the sands of Karbala. They did not have the decency to bury the body of the grandson of Rasulullah. They wished to lower his status, whilst they buried and shrouded their own soldiers. But there was no one to cover and bury the grandson of the Prophet. That morning, the family members of the Imams were taken captive. Little hands were tied with ropes. The hands of the women were tied with ropes. They were taken captives in the same manner that the Roman prisoners were brought for the people of the Muslimin. Their faces uncovered, their personalities paraded for the people. Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam narrates from his father, Imam Bakr, who relates from his father, Imam Zain al-Abidin, who asked about the medium of transport sent by Yazid for him, and he replied, Imam Sajjad replies, saying that I was mounted upon a feeble and naked camel without a saddle, while the head of Imam Husayn alayhi salam was raised upon a bamboo, and the women were behind me mounted upon mules devoid of saddles, while the guards had surrounded us behind our heads and all around with extended lances. And if a drop of tear would fall off from any one of our eyes, their head would be beaten with their lances until they entered us into the city of Damascus, and a caller was announcing, O Syrians, these are the captives of the accursed family. Perhaps the most difficult moment was the time when they had to leave the plains of Karbala, and they were forced to pass by the bodies of the shuhada. The scene was so difficult for Imam Sajjad alayhi salam that he was about to pass away with grief. And when Lady Zainab salamullah alayha asks him, he says, why should I not turn restless and not risk my life when I see my master, my brothers, my uncles and cousins and my family fallen down, drenched in dust and blood, bare and naked in the desert? As for Lady Zainab salamullah alayha, the narrator says, I can forget everything, but I can never forget the moment when Zainab, the daughter of Fatima, passes by her brother Husayn and sees him fallen upon the ground, and she calls out, O Muhammad, salutations of the heavenly angels be upon you. This is Husayn, drenched in blood and cut asunder, fallen down in the desert. O Muhammad, your daughters are captive, and your progeny is fallen martyred, while the wind is sprinkling sand upon their bodies. The narrator says that by Allah, her words made every friend and foes weep. ألا لعنة الله على قوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept our efforts and our mourning during these last 11 nights of the month of Muharram. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to raise us amongst the companions of Imam Husayn alayhi salam and to allow us to become the companions of our 12th Imam. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to enlighten us with the reality of wilayah in ourselves and to recognize it outside of ourselves and to implement it wherever we can. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the opportunity and to be able to partake in trying to grow a sacred community that is based on wilayah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to assist those who are struggling, those who are in the hospital, those who are sick, those who are in difficulty with a complete recovery. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to assist those who are struggling in Gaza and those in Palestine, to allow them to regain their lands and their lives and to regain their izzah and to destroy the enemies and to destroy their stratagems. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to raise us amongst the companions of the Imam. Wa akhiru da'wahum an alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.
Ya Husayn. Husayn eman bia و این دل شکسته را بخر حسین من مسافر جامانده را با خود ببر حسین من بیا و این دل شکسته را بخر حسین من مسافر جامانده را با خود ببر حسین من حسین من حسین من حسین من بیا و این دل شکسته را بخر حسین من مسافر جامانده را با خود ببر حسین من آسمانی شده ام بینشانی شده ام ارغوانی شده ام قد کمانی شده ام خسته حال و پیرم در کنار قبر تو می شود پر تو کشته آخر تو که منم خواهر تو بی تو من می میرم حسین من بیا و این دل شکسته را بخر حسین من مسافر جامانده را با خود ببر حسین من حسین من حسین من اوه دل شکسته را بخر حسین من مسافر جامانده حسین من حسین من حسین من ظهر عاشورای تو تشنه بوسیدنت از کنار خیمه ها در میان تشنگی رفتی و جا ماندم طاقتم را طاق کرد پای پر آبله ام مثل مادرم شدم بعد تو نماز را من نشسته خواندم حسین من بیا که از جور زمان خسته ام حسین من به انتظار مردنم نشسته ام حسین من بیا که از جور زمان خسته ام حسین من به انتظار مردنم نشسته ام حسین من حسین من حسین من عقده ام وا شده است دیده دریا شده است سینه غوغا شده است مثل رؤیا شده است نظر تو شد جانم این تویی کنار من ای گل بهار من سر بریده یار من تا به آخرین نفس پیش تو میمانم حسین من تو رفتی و شکسته شد حریم تو حسین من آواره خراب شد یتیم تو حسین من آواره خراب شد یتیم تو حسین من آواره حسین من حسین من، حسین من. مرگ من بود دمی کست و جدایم کردند، در همان گوشه گودال فدایم کردند. دوستانم که نبودند بگریند به من، دشمنانم همگی گریه برایم کردند. من که خود راه نمای همه عالم بودم، من که خود راه نمای همه عالم بودم، سر خونین تو را راه نمایم کردند. هر کجا خواستم از پای در افتم، دیدم کودکان دست گشودند و دعایم کردم. خجلم از تو که گم گشت امانت هایت، بر سر خار دویدند و صدایم کردند، بر سر خار دویدند و صدایم کردند. گریه ها داشتم از دوری روی تو، ولی خنده ها بود که بر اشک عزایم کردند. همراهانم که گرفتند غبار از محمل، همه در خاک فتادند و رهایم کردند. تا دم مرگ طرفدار تو بودم ای دوست، دشمنان یک سر تحسین به وفایم کردند. حسین من بیا و این دل شکسته را بخر، حسین من مسافر جامانده را با خود ببر، حسین من، حسین من، حسین من.
جان مرا جانان حسین، هجر مرا پایان حسین، درد مرا درمان حسین، جانم حسین، جانم حسین، ای جان جانانم حسین، جانم حسین، جانم حسین، ای جان جانانم حسین. از مهر تو دارم نشان، عشق رخت دارم به جان، نام تو دارم بر زبان، جانم حسین، جانم حسین، ای جان جانانم حسین، جانم حسین، جانم حسین، ای جان جانانم حسین، جانم حسین، جانم حسین، ای جان جانانم حسین. ای اسم نیکویت دوا، ای ذکر دلجویت شفا، ای مظهر لطف خدا، جانم حسین، جانم حسین، جانم حسین، جانم حسین، ای جان جانانم حسین، جانم حسین، جانم حسین، ای جان جانانم حسین. راز و نیاز من تویی، سوز و گداز من تویی، جانم حسین، جانم حسین، ای جان جانانم حسین، جانم حسین، جانم حسین، جانم حسین، جانم حسین. عشق تو را دیوانه‌ام، گنج تو را ویرانه‌ام، شمع تو را پروانه‌ام، جانم حسین، جانم حسین، جانم حسین، جانم حسین، جانم حسین،
جانم یا حسین، یا حسین، یا حسین،
کہتا ہے زہرا کا بیٹا حل من ناصر ینصرنا حل من ناصر ینصرنا حل من ناصر ینصرنا کربل سے آتی ہے صدا حل من ناصر ینصرنا اون محمد پاس نہیں ہے قاسم کا لاشا ہے ٹکڑے بازو کٹا کے میرا غازی سو گیا ہے دریا کے کنارے غربت میں تیشے کی صدا حل من ناصر ینصرنا حل من ناصر ینصرنا ینصرنا دیکھو ضعیفی رن میں شہ کی باپ ہے بھورا بیٹا جوان ہے لاشائے اکبر کیسے اٹھائے کتنا کٹن یہ امتحان ہے کاندھے پہ رکھ کے شہ نے کہا حل من ناصر ینصرنا حل من ناصر ینصرنا حل من ناصر ہاتھ میں اصغر کا لاشا ہے پر نہیں ہے طاقت پاؤں میں کیسے دکھائے لاش ماں کو پالا تھا وہ جس نے چاہوں میں آگی بری دے کر یہ صدا حل من ناصر حل من ناصر ینصرنا ینصرنا جلتی زمین پر شاہ پرے ہے شمر سوار ہے اب سینے پر سوکھی زباں ہے گرم ہوا ہے گردن پہ چلتا ہے خنجر ایک ایک ضرب پیشے نے کہا حل من ناصر ینصرنا حل من ناصر ینصرنا حل من میں جلائے گھر کو لٹائے چینی ہے سب ظالم نے چادر جائے کہاں غیرت کے مارے سہ میں کھڑے ہے آل پیمبر کہتی ہے زینب بے پردہ حل من ناصر ینصرنا حل من ناصر ینصرنا حل من ناصر ینصرنا کربل میں عاشور کا دن تھا زینب خیمے کے در پہ کھڑی تھی بھائی کو ذبح ہوتے ہوئے وہ آنکھوں سے دیکھتی حایت جانی بولی حزین کربلا حل من ناصر ینصرنا 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 یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین عباس تیرا حق ہے زمانہ تجھے روئے عباس یہ تیرا حق ہے زمانہ تجھے روئے جب شام و سحر فاطمہ زہرا تجھے روئے عباس یہ تیرا حق ہے زمانہ تجھے روئے عباس تیرا حق ہے زمانہ تجھے روئے در لیے پہرے پہ ستنگر کھڑا ہے در لیے پہرے پہ ستمگر کھڑا ہے
کیسے تیرے لاشے پہ سکینہ تجھے روئے عباس یہ تیرا حق ہے زمانہ تجھے روئے عباس یہ تیرا حق ہے زمانہ تجھے جس وقت اٹھایا نہ گیا لاشا جواں کا جس وقت اٹھایا نہ گیا لا جواں کا شے اس گری اکبر سے زیادہ تجھے روئے عباس تیرا حق ہے زمانہ تجھے روئے عباس تیرا حق ہے زمانہ تجھے روئے زینب نے کہا شام غریبا میں غازی زینب نے کہا شام غریبا میں غازی بے پردہ مجھے دیکھ کے بابا تجھے روئے عباس تیرا حق ہے زمانہ تجھے روئے عباس تیرا حق ہے زمانہ تجھے روئے سجدے کے لیے جب لیا ہاتھوں کا سہارا سجدے کے لیے جب لیا ہاتھوں کا سہارا تو سجاد مصلی پہ ہمیشہ تجھے روئے عباس یہ تیرا حق ہے زمانہ تجھے روئے عباس یہ تیرا حق ہے زمانہ تجھے روئے بن ہاتھوں کے کس طرح تو گھوڑے سے گرا تھا بن ہاتھوں کے کس طرح تو گھوڑے سے گرا تھا یہ سن کے بہت اہل مدینہ تجھے روئے عباس تیرا حق ہے زمانہ تجھے روئے عباس تیرا حق ہے زمانہ تجھے روئے یا حسین حسین
یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین بر محمد و آل محمد صلوات
Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We are serving the food in the gym. If I can request everybody to head over to the gym immediately. We will inshallah reconvene here for namaz at 9:26. Thank you.
We appreciate if sisters and also can go to the gym. Inshallah, we will have food because we need to come quickly for salat, inshallah. The food is ready in the gym, inshallah.
سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر. الله أكبر الله أكبر. الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن عليا ولي الله. أشهد أن عليا حجة الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. حي على خير العمل. حي على خير العمل. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. لا إله إلا الله. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وسلم.
صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن عليا ولي الله. أشهد أن عليا حجة الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. حي على خير العمل. حي على خير العمل. قد قامت الصلاة. قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر، الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، الرحمن الرحيم، مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم، صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنا أنزلناه في ليلة القدر، وما أدراك ما ليلة القدر. ليلة القدر خير من 1000 شهر. تنزل الملائكة والروح فيها بإذن ربهم من كل يوم. سلام هي حتى مطلع الفجر. الله أكبر. سبحان الله، سبحان الله، سبحان الله، سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر، الله أكبر. سبحان الله، سبحان الله، سبحان الله. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقوم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، الرحمن الرحيم، مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم، صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد، الله الصمد، لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. كذلك الله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله. سبحان الله، سبحان الله، سبحان الله. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان الله، سبحان الله، سبحان الله. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر، الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بحول الله وقوته. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. يا ولي العافية نسألك العافية، عافية الدين والدنيا والآخرة. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. تسبيحات فاطمة الزهراء سلام الله عليها. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك موجبات رحمتك وعزائم مغفرتك والنجاة من النار ومن كل بلية والفوز بالجنة والرضوان في دار السلام وجوار نبيك محمد عليه وآله السلام. اللهم ما بنا من نعمة فمنك، لا إله إلا أنت، استغفرك وأتوب إليك. صلوات.